So, maybe you're a musician or some other kind of creative and you practice your art in your spare time. You're very passionate, very driven about it. But are you really an artist? Can you really call yourself an artist? Or are you just suffering from delusions of grandeur? All right, let's talk about this. All right, how y'all doing? Tony here. I am the guitarist for the band Mars, and this is House of Mars, where we talk about not just our music, but all the music. And today's topic and clickbaity title is, are you a real artist? What do I mean by that? Well, what inspired this, I was watching a video by, Steve Albini. If you don't know who Steve Albini is, he is a very famous, very well-known, especially in the world of audio engineering, audio engineer. He is probably best known for recording Nirvana's album In Utero back in the late 90s. He has also recorded Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, but mostly what he does is he runs his own recording studio out of Chicago, I believe. Now, he originally started out as a young punk rocker and back in the day, and one of the things about punk rock, they always had that DIY, that do-it-yourself mentality about writing their music, creating their music, and recording their music. And he carried that forward with him his entire life. And to this day, he just sees himself as someone, as an audio engineer. He never presumes to call himself a producer or anything like that. He is simply there to capture whatever sounds, whatever band is in the room at the time. And it was interesting because a lot of the people who will be watching that video will never achieve the level of success that he's had. And he was sort of acknowledging that and commenting on that in the video. And he was talking about if you are an artist or a musician or an audio engineer, but you just do it in your spare time, it isn't how you make your bread and butter. Can you really sort of identify? Can you make that sort of how you present yourself to the world or how you see yourself? Can you do that even though it's not something that you're doing full time? And if you are a musician or an artist and you're struggling to sort of get it out there and maybe you've been at it for a while, there can be that imposter syndrome where maybe you feel like deep down inside, is this worth it? Or, do you feel a little bit ridiculous or something like that? Are people talking about you behind your back? Because, I mean, why are they still doing this? I mean, I can understand doing it back then, but I mean, they're still plugging away at this stuff. I mean, what are they trying to do anyway? I mean, our culture is full of people, full of artists who have made it, and here we are still scrabbling away in the garage or in a spare room, trying not to disturb the neighbors. So if what you're doing might just come off as like a hobby or a pastime to an outsider, are you allowed to have that thing? Are you allowed to define yourself by that thing, even if there are other things that from an objective point of view, might better describe you or more easily describe you? For instance, I remember seeing this, it was a movie called, what was it called? Under the Electric Sky. It was about a big EDM festival that was in Las Vegas. It took place in Las Vegas. This video is, I don't know, it's probably about 10 years old. It's been a while since I've seen it. And it's not just covered the concert itself or the festival itself, but all of the fans who were going to see it. And it sort of told the lives of a few different fans. And there was this one young dude who was a fireman. But his real passion, his real pursuit, his real tribe was not just EDM music, but the people he met at these festivals and the people who were just as passionate as he was. And yeah, he had his buddies at work who always gave him shit about it and everything. And that was his job, but that wasn't who he was. Even though being a fireman, it's got some cultural prestige to it, but that's not how he saw himself. He saw himself as belonging to this other thing, and that's what defined him, and that's how he chose it, even though he took a lot of shit for it. And before I go any further into this, it's okay to just this be a hobby for you. There are hobbyists who pursue music, and if that's all it is to you anymore, maybe you were very passionate when you're younger, and now it's just this thing you do in your spare time. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there are plenty of people who play golf, and it is something that they pursue with a certain amount of passion and vigor and regularity. They would never presume to call themselves a golfer. Nothing wrong with that. And I can tell you, there are a whole lot of guitarists especially who have long since given up on the dream of being a rock star, but that does not stop them from dropping a whole bunch of cash on guitars and other equipment. It seems as their earning power goes up, so does their taste in boutique amplifiers and fine bourbon that they get shitty drunk on in the basement every couple of weeks, right? But as far as calling yourself an artist, we do sort of have these cultural templates, these preconceptions of what it means to be a real artist. And the first and most obvious one is the successful artist. I mean, we've all seen the rock star stories, the VH1 behind the music. You have these rock stars who came from nothing and just started out from nothing and ground it out and ground it out. And finally, after all of that hard work, they were rewarded with just massive success, financial success, creative success, and everything. And then they just, snort it all up their nose and blow it. But we have that template as far as what that means to be a successful artist. And then there's even one that's on the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the starving artist, which is, okay, maybe you've never achieved any sort of objective commercial success where you can support yourself on what you do, but you stick to it. The sort of the Van Gogh narrative, I guess you'd say, where you stick to it no matter what. You don't allow yourself to be diverted from your art, and you pursue it even though it might be a difficult path that you're walking, and you do it and you remain true to it, and you don't allow yourself to be distracted or to sell out for other things, for such material things like food or basic shelter. But there's this huge area in between those two extremes. There's a bunch of us who are in the middle of those two extremes. What if you're someone, and whatever it is you're doing, whatever art you're pursuing, it's more than a hobby for us. It's like this itch that always has to be scratched. So yeah, you're probably holding down a full-time job, or you support a family, or whatever your scenario is, but you've always got this thing that's always on your mind. It's always there. It's almost a distraction to you, even at your real job. And it's something that almost like a compulsion for you. And you know that you always will be doing it because it animates you. And if you stop doing it, you'll sort of spiritually extinguish. What about those people? What about us? Well, my attitude, my advice is own it. If this is this thing that you feel at your core, this is what you think that you are, what you know that you are at your core, own it. And let all of those close to you know that. Let them know how important it is to you. You don't have to hide it like it's some secret addiction or something. Own it. And that's what Steve Albini said in that interview that I saw with him. He said you can absolutely call yourself an audio engineer if it's something, even if it's just something you do in your spare time. If that's the thing that animates you, if that's how you see yourself at your core, then that's what you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. And when you think about it, that whole punk DIY ethos about this is something that you're doing more for the passion of it and more because you're driven to do it than any expectation that you will ever be commercially successful at it, however you define that. Implicit in that is that, well, yeah, you're going to have to do it in your spare time. You're going to have to hold down a job. You're going to be doing this, scraping up spare change to do it in your spare time. That's just part of it. And another thing is you don't have to look at yourself like some sort of poser because you didn't have the guts to do it full time, or you just didn't have that opportunity, or you just can't. It still can be how you define yourself. And another thing to understand is when you're in this difficult middle ground, there are seasons to creativity. There are seasons to what you're doing. Sometimes you'll be full of inspiration. It'll just come pouring out of you, and it'll just be this thing, and you'll be riding that wave. And there will be times when the inspiration just dries up, and that's okay. There will be seasons to your creativity, and there'll be seasons to this pursuit, whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, sometimes the guitar goes into the corner and collects dust for a while, or sometimes there's a song that you've been meaning to mix, but it's just sitting there on your laptop for weeks or maybe even months because you just don't have the time, or it's just not there. The spark isn't there, and that's okay. Again, there are these seasons of creativity, and if you are going to be doing whatever it is you're doing for the rest of your life, well then accept that and acknowledge that, and then just keep pushing forward. So that's about all I got to say about that. I'm kind of all talked out right now. So, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you will, please, and I'll see you next time. Later.